When the PlayStation 2 first got released, it had a very limited new game launch titles, but part of the reason why the PS2 was successful was not because of the new games that got released, but the backwards compatibility that it had in the system. While Sony planned on launching more games later on in 2001, the PlayStation fans still could play their PS1 games on their PS2, while they wait for the newer games to later come out on the system. Another example is the Wii. The Wii uses backward compatibility so you could play the GameCube games on the system. Since the Wii got released, the games were mostly expensive. Nintendo fans turned to the GameCube library to buy cheaper games to play on their newer console, thus giving the GameCube more recognition in the later years. My point I'm making is that backward compatibility was a great thing to have in a game console. But what company started backward compatibility from the beginning? Was it Nintendo, Sony, Sega? It turned out that Atari came up with the design of backward compatibility. In this video, I'll tell you the process that the company had to do in order to achieve this feature. Atari is a very unique company. They released the game console Atari 2600 right after the Magnavox Odyssey and the Fairchild Video Entertainment System got released in the market. But Atari was regarded as the console that popularized home gaming. Because sales were so strong for the Atari 2600, even though the home gaming was still new to the market, over 500 titles had been released for the system by 1984. The year the company released their new Atari 7800, which was almost fully backward compatible with the 2600, meaning that even though only 13 original Atari 7800 games were available on or near the release date, that the potential gaming library was going to be massive. But even though the Atari 7800 was the first console to have backward compatibility without the use of additional modules, it was pretty much outdated before it hit the shelves. Atari Incorporated had burned through a lot of good grace with some lackluster conversions of arcade titles and cash-grabbing movie tie-ins, like this game right here. The company's owners, Warner Communications, had squandered more potential love with the release of the 5200 in 1982. Which was billed as supposedly a higher-end complement for the popular Atari video computer system, as it was called before the VCS was renamed to the 2600 upon the 52's release. However, the new Atari 5200's internal hardware was almost identical to that of its predecessor. Although software was not directly compatible between the two systems without the expensive purchase of an optional adapter, all that really distinguished it was a shiny new case and an improved controller. The savvy public are not so easily fooled, and the Atari 5200 was discontinued after just 2 years in the market, with total sales of about 1 million units, compared to Atari 2600 with over 30 million sales. The Atari 7800 should have rectified the company's good fortunes, and maybe if it had arrived earlier on the market, then the 7800 could have been more successful. 1982's ColecoVision and the 1983 arrival of the Nintendo Entertainment System were putting pressure on Atari to up their game. The 7800 was their answer with this additional RAM and the ability to access more cartridge data at one time than the popular 2600, plus some improved graphics, but offered the ability to easily access that vast library of games, what Atari no doubt would be a huge selling point for the 7800. Following an announcement at the 1984 Summer Consumer Electronics Show, the 7800 began what was intended to be the first area of a national rollout, beginning in Southern California in June of 1984. 13 new Atari 7800 games were announced for the system's launch. These titles include Miss Pac-Man, Pole Position 2, Centipede, Joust, Dig Dug, Desert Falcon, Robotron 2084, Galaga, Food Fight, Ball Blazer, Rescue on Fractalis, Track and Field, and Xavius. They're all mainly arcade titles from the preceding few years, but all very popular ones and enhanced versions to anything that had been released before. However, 1 month after the first Atari 7800 hit the shelves, Warner Communications sold Atari's consumer division and all projects were halted during the initial evaluation period. Purchased by Commodore International founder Jack Tramiel, it's often incorrectly asserted that he trash-talked the Atari 7800, feeling that video games were a past fad, and subsequently asserted that he dusted off the Atari 7800 once Nintendo Entertainment System became successful. The reality was that a contractual issue arose in the third-party developers of the Atari 7800 had not been paid for their work. Warner and Tramiel battled back and forth over who was accountable, with Tramiel believing that the 7800 should have been covered as part of his acquisition deal. In May of 1985, Tramiel relented and paid the overdue payment, which led to additional negotiations regarding to initial launch titles that had been developed and then an effort to find someone to lead the newly created Atari Corp's video game division. Because of all this, the original production run of this Atari 7800 languished on warehouse shelves until it was reintroduced in January of 1986. As the 8-bit gaming era was already saturated and nearing an end, the Atari 7800 didn't stand a chance. With a subdued marketing budget of just $300,000, and with Nintendo controlling 80% of the North American market by the time of its release, the Atari 7800 sold a mere 100,000 units in its first 12 months. However, the Atari 7800 stayed in production until 1992, and thanks for its low price point, launched at just $79 and doing well in the European region, it turned out to be a profitable venture for the new owners at Atari Corp. Not because of its library of just 59 Atari 7800 games, but mainly down to the system's 2600 backward compatibility, offering access to over 10 times that amount. Thanks for watching.